We've always been storytellers, right? It's kind of the oldest human project, trying to make sense of our world. But what if the most basic story we tell ourselves, the one about a world full of solid things, is just wrong? Today, we're going to dive into a question that might just flip how you see, well, everything.
For thousands of years, we've been trying to map our world through stories. You see it in epic poems like the Aeneid, which are really just charting the incredibly difficult journey of being alive. Through philosophy, history, mythology, we're always building these vast archives of human experience, just trying to figure out where we came from and where we're going.
And it's not just ancient history, right? We do the exact same thing today when we try to get our heads around the massive, complex systems we've built. We're constantly analyzing everything from the deep-seated myths of capitalism to the shadowy corners of geopolitics, all in this grand effort to understand the forces that are shaping our lives.
And then, of course, there's art. In literature that tries to nail down that raw, electric feeling of just being alive. We dig into the strategic mind of a samurai, the drama of Lord Byron, the quiet journey of a monk. Each story, each poem, is like another layer on this giant collective map of human consciousness.
Okay, but here's where it gets really wild. What if all these incredible maps we've been making are all drawn on top of one giant mistaken assumption? We just assume the world is made of things, of objects and people and places. But what if that's just a convenient illusion?
And that brings us to what some thinkers are calling the thing mistake. And it's an idea that really challenges our most basic gut feeling about how the world works. So for pretty much all of Western history, we've been running on something called substance metaphysics. It's that intuitive, common-sense idea that the world is just a big collection of distinct objects, rocks, trees, stars, even atoms. They're the basic building blocks, right? The nouns of the universe. But here's the thing, and this is so cool when you see it. If you look at the history of science, there's this amazing pattern. Time after time, we've mistaken processes for substances. We thought fire was a thing called phlogiston. Turns out it's a process, combustion. We thought heat was a fluid called caloric. Nope, it's a process, kinetic energy. We even thought life itself was some kind of special fluid, but now we know it's just this incredibly complex, ongoing process.
Okay, so this lays out two totally different ways to look at reality. The old substance view says the world is made of static things, and change is just something that happens to them. But this new process view, it just flips that whole idea on its head. It says the world is made of change, of events, and what we call things are really just stable patterns that show up in all that change.
So what does it actually mean to live in a world where reality is a verb, not a noun? How does that even work?
Okay, let's take a candle flame. It looks like a stable, persistent thing, doesn't it? You can look at it, you can point to it, but it's not. A flame is an event. It's a self-sustaining process of combustion that has to constantly pull in fuel and oxygen and push out waste. If you cut off that flow, if it ever reaches equilibrium with its surroundings, poof, it's gone. So the flame isn't a thing at all. It's a happening.
Okay, but wait a second. If everything is a process, why does stuff seem so solid, so stable? Well, it turns out stability can happen in two different ways. First, there's what you could call energy well stability. Think of an atom. It's just sitting there in a low-energy state, happy to stay that way. But then there's a much more active and way more interesting kind of stability called far from equilibrium. That's things like flames, or you and me. We are actively fighting against disorder, constantly exchanging energy with our environment just to hold ourselves together.
And look, this isn't just some weird philosophical thought experiment. It actually lines up perfectly with what we know from modern physics. Quantum field theory tells us that the most fundamental layer of reality isn't made of tiny, solid billiard balls. It's made of fields, dynamic, energetic, interacting fields. What we see as a particle is just a little stable ripple in one of those fields. The universe, at its absolute core, is a verb.
All right, so this raises a massive question, doesn't it? If the universe is really this fluid, dynamic process, why on earth do we experience it as a world full of solid, stable, separate objects? To answer that, we have to stop looking out at the world and start looking into our own minds. This is where we get into something called cognitive metaphysics. The basic idea is that your mind isn't a blank slate just passively taking in information. Nope, it's more like it comes with a pre-installed operating system, a whole set of built-in categories and assumptions that automatically shape all the raw data from your senses into a picture of the world that actually makes sense.
Let me show you what I mean with a really cool classic experiment. So imagine you see an object,
and it goes behind a screen. Then, a moment later, another object comes out the other side. How does your brain decide if it's the same object that went in?
So here's what they do in the actual experiment. Researchers show people, and even monkeys, a lemon moving along a clear path. Then the lemon disappears into a short tunnel that blocks their view for just a second.
But then, a moment later, a kiwi comes out the other side of the tunnel, moving along the exact same path at the exact same speed.
And this is where it gets absolutely nuts. As long as there's no time delay, both the humans and the monkeys see this as one single event. They don't see a lemon disappearing and a kiwi appearing. They see the lemon magically transforming into a kiwi.
So what does this tell us? It's just incredible. It shows that our brains aren't passive observers, they're active storytellers. And for the story your brain wants to tell, a smooth, continuous path through space and time is way more important than what the thing actually looks like. Your brain will literally make up a story about a lemon turning into a kiwi just to avoid having to deal with two separate objects. The category of object isn't something we discover out there in the world, it's a template we impose on the world.
Okay, so let's try to put these two huge ideas together. We've got a universe that's fundamentally a fluid process, but we have brains that are hardwired to see a world of solid things. What in the world does that mean for us?
What it really comes down to is a classic map versus the territory problem. Our minds are the map makers. They create these wonderfully neat, simplified charts with clear boundaries and fixed points. But the territory, reality itself, isn't a chart. It's a vast, flowing, ever-changing river.
So you can think of it like we're working with three different maps of reality, all at once. The humanities give us our cultural maps, the stories that give life meaning. Process metaphysics is like a map from fundamental physics, telling us the territory itself is a dynamic process. And cognitive metaphysics gives us a map of the map maker, our own minds, which are built to see a world of objects. So, does this mean your everyday experience is wrong? Not at all. It's actually a super useful model, an evolutionary masterpiece that helps us navigate the world and, not walk into walls. But it's not the whole story. Realizing that reality is a process doesn't just change some dusty philosophical idea, it reframes everything. It means you are not a thing, you are a process. Your relationships aren't things, they are processes. Society isn't a thing, it is a dynamic, ever-unfolding event. And all of this leaves us with one last, kind of unsettling question. If the solid world you experience every single day is a story, a model constructed by your own mind, who exactly is the architect?